What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college basketball week 2 top 25. Unfortunately, we didn't get our preseason out in time, but we're going to cover that really quick before we get this video started. And make sure you hit that subscribe button down below because to 200 subscribers, we'll be doing that autograph item giveaway. But Ty, we'll start here with our preseason top 25. Out of these teams, here, what's been the big storyline for any of them?
I'm going to start with Florida State, I guess. They were 25 in our preseason, not ranked anymore. Just got to get that out of the way. They're 0-3 with three horrible losses already. And I think that's just been a story throughout college basketball, not teams in our rankings, a couple of them, I guess, but there has been a lot of teams playing cupcake games and losing more than we've ever seen. So I think it's going to be a crazy year. But in terms of these teams, I think you got to watch out for Michigan State. Obviously, we're big Michigan fans, but I'm going to put my bias aside. The way they competed with Gonzaga and are competing right now with Kentucky, I think that's going to be a team to watch out for this year.
And then dropping from our rankings, we have Oregon and Florida State after some bad losses, obviously last week. And then in our others receiving votes, we have Xavier, Purdue, UConn, and Miami. So good group of teams here to start the year, but we're going to jump right into it here at 25. We got Dayton Flyers joining our rankings. 2-0, nothing really spectacular happening. We still don't know all the guys on the teams yet. We don't know people's averages and whatnot. So it's going to be kind of a brief video here, but the defense has looked good, allowing 54 points per game, and they should have two more wins this week one on the road and one at home.
All right, 24, we have Texas A&M defending NIT champions now jumping into our rankings. Another team playing really good defense, and that's no cupcake against Murray State, a team who's been good a couple years in a row. So they'll have to bring their A game if they're going to get through that.
23, we got the Red Raiders moving up. This team, it's all about defense, as we know. We're ranked last year number 1 in defense efficiency, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're top 5 again this year. Look for a similar year kind of result how they had last year, and if they can gel quick, I think by conference play, this team could have an even better year than we saw last year.
22, we have Villanova, an upset loss at Temple. So that's really a head scratcher for them. I do think they will get it together, though. I mean, Villanova, they always have really good fundamentals and they always play really well as a team. But a big test this week is they take on Michigan State at Breslin. So it's going to be some early question marks if they fall to 2-2 and lose that game.
At 21, we have those Spartans, and we couldn't move them out of the rankings here, just in part to how close they played Gonzaga. And I think it says more about Michigan State early than it does Gonzaga early because, Gonzaga obviously loses a lot of talent and gains it right back right away. But this Spartan team didn't really have too much last year. A lot of question marks there, and even coming into this year. But they showed that they can play these teams early. I mean, they're competing with Kentucky right now. It's halftime in that game, and it's like 3-point game, I think, right now. So they are, showing us that this team can compete this year early, which is a big surprise, not just to me, but to you as well. We thought it would kind of be wipe the floor games. Michigan State's going to come out slow, whatnot, but they do have one of the hardest schedules of the year. They had Gonzaga, Kentucky, Villanova, and then Alabama in the first few weeks. So we're really going to see if playing this tough schedule is going to hurt them at the end of the year, because if these are all losses, then those losses are going to pile up, especially playing in the Big Ten.
And at 20, we have Alabama, the team that will be taking on Michigan State coming up. And this team has a lot of shooting coming back. Obviously, last year they loved to chuck up threes, just didn't really make a lot of them, unfortunately. So if they can fit Nate Oates' game plan better this year, I think they're going to be a dangerous team. The type of team that could beat anyone, but also lose to a lot of teams below them, depending on if they have a good shooting night or a bad shooting night.
19, we got San Diego State, team out of the Mountain West that is probably going to fly under the radar all year until, they wind up in the top 5 because they're going to be undefeated. And they return most of their talent. It's an older team. Expect this team to finish at least 25 wins plus and be one of those 5-4 seeds that you're going to be, oh, I didn't really know much about them come March.
18, we have our Michigan Wolverines. I thought they looked really good in their first game against Purdue Fort Wayne. Hunter Dickinson obviously is just going to dominate most centers he goes up against, but they got everything they could handle in game 2 from Eastern Michigan. more to do with Eastern Michigan playing really well, but also Michigan's guards have they really struggled in that game. Jet Howard and Jalen Llewellyn both had really bad shooting nights. So I guess we're gonna find out going forward if guard is a weakness for Michigan or if they just had a bad night.
And then at 17, we got Illinois. Nothing too much here for this team except bringing in all the transfers, bringing in some good transfers as well. And I think they're going to be a big part of this future. They play UCLA this week, should be a good game. But it's going to be dependent on the bigs. Once Kofi Coburn leaves, who's going to fill that role for them moving forward?
16, we have Tennessee, a team I was really high on to start the year, but really questionable loss to Colorado. Colorado had just lost to Grambling State, who obviously is kind of a bottom feeder in college basketball. So that's a real head scratcher, but sometimes those happen really early in the season. So I don't think it's panic time at all for Tennessee. I think they'll be just fine.
15, we got Virginia. They play Baylor, top 10 team in our rankings here. And this Virginia team's looking to bounce back after a year that they weren't the best team, but they returned 5 of their top 7 scores. So they are going to have veterans on this team, and they are third in line to be the best team in the ACC. And with UNC and Duke obviously being top tier, this Virginia team could sneak in there.
All right, we got Auburn here at number 14. This team was really inconsistent last year. They looked like the best team in the country by a fair margin for about a month in the season, and then just had a really bad month of February and then an early exit in March. Now they lose Jabari Smith. So we'll see what this team can bring this season. They still return 4 of their top 6 scorers. So a lot of talent coming back. And I think they can be a dangerous team if they can put it all together.
13, we got the Creighton Blue Jays, and this team's going to fly under the radar, no pun intended, all year. And there's always one team in the Big East that isn't Villanova that has a really good year, and they go to the tournament, win a few games, make the Sweet 16. And I think that could be this Creighton team this year. Last year it was Providence, my Friars that I rode the whole year. I think this Creighton team is in for a great year. Nemhard's returning. He was, the big guy until he got hurt. And I think people have not wrote them off, but are overlooking this team early.
All right, Indiana comes in at number 12. I actually watched this team a little bit in their first 2 games, and they were playing absolute cupcakes, but they just wiped the floor with both of those teams as they should. So I think Indiana has a different attitude this year than we've seen in years past. Seems like every year they have high expectations and never live up to them. I think this will finally be the year where they can be a really good team. Obviously, Trace Jackson Davis is going to be one of the best players in the country. Forget centers. He's a top 5 player in college basketball. So if they can get enough shooting around him, I think they should win the Big Ten and make a run in March.
11, we got Arizona. This team is probably going to take a step back a little bit after losing 3 players at the draft. But Tommy Lloyd is going to have a tough year in his second year, bringing in his first class of his own players. It's going to be interesting to see how these Wildcats perform in the Pac-12.
And at number 10, we have UCLA, a team that just seems to have expectations every year now. And I think this year, a lot of people are forgetting players that they have coming back. They still have Jules Bernard this year. They still have Jaime Jaquez, who feels like he's been there forever. So they still have a lot of talent from the team 2 years ago that made the Final Four, and a really, really good coach in Mick Cronin, who might be a top 5 coach in college basketball. So I think this team should be the favorite in the Pac-12, and they'll be dangerous again.
At 9, we got Texas. Chris Beard, he's looking to build off a season, full of growing pains. He brought in 2 transfers and 5-star recruits. And, when you got Marcus Carr on your team, it's going to be pretty good. So their biggest test, they face Gonzaga later this week. And if they can beat Gonzaga, then this team might be jumping into our top 5 next week.
At number 8, we have Duke. This is a team that I think is going to take a little bit of a step back this year without Coach K, obviously. I mean, that's the biggest loss, but they also lose Paulo Banchero, who really carried the team. He had a lot of talent around him, but everything pretty much ran through him last year. So I think they'll take a little bit of a step back this year. I guess we'll find out tonight what they really have as they take on Kansas, the defending champs. But it's really them in North Carolina in the ACC. I know Virginia's right there, but I think it'll come down to them two still for the ACC championship.
7, we got Arkansas. They lost almost everything, but they should be pretty good. They brought in 7 guys, 4 transfers, 3 5 stars. And, in the SEC play, Musselman knows how to coach and get close wins. So expect this Razorbacks team to be really good this year.
Number 6, we have Houston. And from now on, I think all 6 of these teams have an argument to be number 1. And Houston looked like potentially a top 5 team for much of last year before they kind of tanked in late February. And now they get Marcus Sasser back, who was their best player last year, but was hurt at the end of the season. So that's a huge player to have back. Kelvin Sampson's still a great coach, and this team's going to be really scary for anyone to play against because they play really good defense and they're very athletic.
Starting our top 5, we got Baylor. They're 3-0 already and have a tough matchup at Virginia. And we're going to see what they're going to do this year. But when you got Scott Drew as head coach, there's nothing to overreact at. Even if they lose at Virginia, these Baylor Bears are still going to be a very solid team.
Number 4, we have Gonzaga, a team that I was really high on, but they just did not look like a typical Gonzaga when they took on Michigan State. Now, I know it's early. The game was outside, so that might have played something to do with their lack of outside shooting. But we're used to Gonzaga just making it rain from outside and having a dominant center. Well, this year they look like they might struggle a little bit unless that was just a fluke. But obviously, Drew Timme is a top 5 player in college basketball, maybe the best player, a guy that just lives in college forever, apparently. And he should dominate again this year.
At 3, we got the Tar Heels, who are the preseason number 1 in the AP. We have them here at 3 just because, their run last year was a magical one. But is it going to be, repeated this year? I think it might be. They return a lot of good players. Got Peter Nance from Northwestern in, and he's going to fill that Brady Manek role, which will be pivotal for them. And I think that's the key, factor for them moving forward. But Bacot, obviously, if he has another dominant year, this Tar Heel team is going to be on another crash course for a Final Four run.
And number 2, we have the defending champs in the Kansas Jayhawks. It's hard to put them at 1 because they did lose a lot of talent, but it's Kansas, so obviously they have a lot of really good recruits coming in. Jalen Wilson is going to be the go-to guy returning from last year. He's a senior now, so I think he's going to be the guy that they really lean on this season to be that guy that they'll go to late in games. And, this team is just so consistent. They've been probably the most consistent program in college basketball over the last 15 or so years. So I don't think they'll take any dip this year, and they won't have any championship hangover.
And at 1, we got Kentucky, and they have some pivotal games this week. This is the preseason favorite to win it all, but we're running out of time here. So make sure you guys come back next week to see if Kentucky's still at top after their big games. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.